Oliver, should we get started?
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Judy Chan. I am an education consultant at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology. Today is my honor to host the Spring Institute with 5 faculty members from 5 different faculties to share with us the new and creative way to embed climate and sustainability in our classrooms. When Oliver asked me to prepare and land acknowledgement for this workshop, I felt very honored and privileged. In the past, for many other workshops that I host or facilitate myself, I often will put an image of a map up, an indigenous art, a tree, a plant. I then talk about what I learned about this indigenous plant or art. Sometimes I may share my own family immigration stories, how my family moved from one colonial land to another land. And then sometimes I may also make a commitment. I say, I will do my best to add on my own learning, and I want to teach my kids how to protect the land that we live on, how we are going to make our land that we call home a better place. Today, I don't need to do any of this. I feel that all the panelists here today who talk about climate and sustainability, they are enacting some form or ways of the indigenous way of knowing, teaching and learning and living. I just cannot wait to hear from them how they guide our students to pay attention to nature, to listen to them and learn from our Mother Nature. And also teach our students and guide our students to learn about what it means by sustainable, what it means that we should only take what's needed, and how we can also reciprocate the gift that we receive from nature and with our own gift, our own knowledge, and receive and gift with gratitude. So again, I can't wait, and thank you very much, all the panelists, for sharing your practice. And this is another form of indigenous way of sharing and learning. Thank you. Olive, back to you.
Thank you, Judy. That was wonderful. And thanks to the team at CTLT for hosting great learning sessions over the years and for having us here as well and allowing us to share the experience that we as a Sustainability Hub and the faculty members that we work with have developed on campus over the years as well. So welcome everyone. My name is Oliver Lane. I'm the manager for teaching and learning at the Sustainability Hub. And the session you're joining today is New and Creative Ways to Embed Climate and Sustainability in Your Class, approaches from 5 faculties at UBC. So quickly, I'm going to go through the agenda for today. I'm going to just give you a very brief overview of who the Sustainability Hub is, what we do, how we support the work of faculty, students, and staff, and the community at large at UBC to advance sustainability and climate goals. And then we'll jump into the presentation. So we have teams of faculty who have been working on specific projects around curriculum development related to sustainability and climate change. So we'll have them present for 10 minutes per project. We'll have, after each presentation, we'll have 5 minutes for questions from participants from the audience. We'll jump on to the next one and so on. And then by around noon, we expect we'll have sort of an open floor for any additional questions, comments, or discussions that can come out of these presentations. And then we'll close close to 12:30. We'll be closing with some final comments and remarks and ending the session at 12:30. So I'll very briefly give you a bit of an overview of who we are at the Sustainability Hub. So we support and empower students, faculty, staff, and the UBC community in general to advance UBC's sustainability and climate goals. We are a non-academic unit located in the SURS building on West Mall. SURS building is the Center for Interactive Research and Sustainability. We share the space with a number of other units like UBC Wellbeing, like CECIL, the Center for Community Engaged Learning, And we offer a number of programs that you might be interested in. Some of them include curriculum and research grants for faculty. We also have opportunities for leadership development and project management development for students through programs like the Sustainability Ambassadors and the Sustainability Scholars. We also host the team, the climate emergency team, and support a lot of that work that's happening on campus as well. And we develop resources for teaching and learning and research for faculty and staff and students to be able to access in their sustainability journeys. Most of our work is in collaboration with other groups. And this is just a quick example of some of the units that we've been working with and collaborating over the last few years. As I mentioned, the Center for Community Engaged Learning is sort of a key partner for us, CTLT as well, participating in these institutes, but also working in orientations for the new faculty. Obviously working with campus and community planning, who are also in the same building. They are focused a lot more on the operations sides of sustainability, while we're more focused, I would say, on the academic side of sustainability. We work with PICS, the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, which is an organization that has four offices in the big research universities in the province. So we host the UBC representative in our hub. We work with UBC Wellbeing as well, and a number of other organizations on campus, including student groups as well. So this is a key part of how we do our work. So some examples that I wanted to mention, for example, in supporting research, we have funds, we have grants through the campus as a living lab program that brings together faculty, operations or staff and students to work on a specific research project. We also develop events for faculty, for students, and for the community at large, including SDG Week, which is Sustainable Development Goals Week, the Climate Emergency Week as well, that happens typically in February. So a number of, and there's multiple other events that we coordinate and host in our space. And some of the grants that I was mentioning as well for faculty include the Sustainability Education Grants. We have the Sustainability Fellows Program that brings together, and a few of the faculty that are presenting today are actually fellows with us or were fellows with us. And we also have the Climate and Wellbeing Education Grant, and that's actually a grant that's in partnership with UBC Wellbeing and is open right now, and the deadline for that application is June 12th, and that's to include climate and well-being content and pedagogy in existing courses. So faculty can apply for that grant to enhance the course that they're already teaching with these components. So that's sort of a sample of the kind of work and programs that we offer. And this ties into key priorities and goals that UBC has. First of all, the UBC 20-year sustainability strategy has a target of providing each student, regardless of their degree program, with access to sustainability education. So we've been working for now 13 years driving this, that wanting students to have access to sustainability education, no matter what field of study they're in. And the vision for this in this strategy is that by 2035, students are provided with knowledge, skills, and experience, enabling them to serve as agents of change, community leaders, and responsible citizens, global citizens. Our work also ties into UBC's goal of transformative learning as well, and also one of the priorities that the Climate Emergency Task Force has put forward after UBC declared a climate emergency in 2019, to expand and enhance climate education and student well-being as well when learning topics like the climate crisis. And so lastly, before we jump into the presentations, I just want to make sure that you know there's a number of resources, including the ones I already mentioned, online. So if you go to sustain.ubc.ca/faculty, you'll find the resources that I mentioned today and some more as well. And you can also visit the Climate Emergency website to see how you can be involved, climateemergency.ubc.ca/take-action. So there's multiple ways to be involved there as student, as staff, as a community member, and as a faculty member as well. So I'm going to end right there, and I move on to introducing our speakers for today. We're going to start off with the two faculty members that have contributed in different ways to the relatively new certificate in climate studies and action. Dr. Tari Vanochko, Professor of Teaching in Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences in the Faculty of Science at UBC Vancouver campus, and is also the Academic Director at the Sustainability Hub. And Dr. Nina Hewitt, Associate Professor of Teaching in Geography, the Faculty of Arts, also at the UBC Vancouver campus. I'm going to pass it over to you. And as I said before, we'll have time for questions at the end of this 10 to 12-minute presentation. And if you want to include your questions in the chat, please go ahead, and we'll be checking the chat for those questions coming up. Okay, over to you, Tara and Nina.
Thanks, Oliver. Are you moving to the next slide? Yeah, there we go. Okay, great. So thanks for this opportunity. I'm going to be tag teaming here with Nina. So I'm going to give a little bit of the background of the Climate Studies and Action Certificate. And then Nina's going to follow up a little bit with some of the alterations that she has made in a specific class to adjust and bring in some of the learning objectives from the certificate into a course that she teaches on campus. So just so the title of this session here today is how to bring climate education or aspects into your classroom. But I'm actually going to be zooming out a little bit more from that and thinking about how do we actually assess some of our programming and identify the key aspects of climate that we want to bring in, particularly to a program or a course. And then Nina's going to talk a little bit more about specifics into a course. So we have now on campus the Certificate for Climate Studies and Action. This is something that Nina and I and a team of others, Jess Dempsey from Faculty of Arts and Geography, and a variety of other people, including students, spent a number of years putting together. And so just to give you a heads up of the certificate language, certificate is sort of a mini minor, and ours is 18 credits. And this allows, the intention of this was to allow students across the entire university to have access to this credential in a way that fit in with their degree, hopefully didn't extend the amount of time that they were spending here on campus. And we really designed it so that it would be open and accessible to all students. This was in response to the student interest and demand for something that really advanced climate education. So not the, they take one course and then they ask the instructor, what next? And so this was really responding to that what next program, right? Let's think about a way where we can provide a holistic, fulsome approach to climate education for students. So as I mentioned, it started in 2020, actually, with a sustainability education grant from the Sustainability Hub. And at that time, I was not the academic director, so I was a faculty member reaching out. And in partnership with Jessica Dempsey, we applied and were successful in getting 2 years of funding from the Sustainability Hub. And that allowed us to go through this process of building a team, hiring students to help us, engaging with the Faculty of Science, the Faculty of Arts, consulting more broadly across the campus, developing the financial planning with the support from the provost office, and then building out all of the certificate forms for curriculum committees, submitting those, getting accepted, and now we're into our first year of offering. So then if you move to the next one. Yeah, so one of the big components of this was reaching out to consult with faculty and students on campus, as well as the community beyond campus, to really identify what important learning objectives would be for a targeted credential in climate. And so after that process of consultation, we've been able to categorize sort of our learning objectives into these 4 areas. So to apply climate literacy, to critically assess climate strategies, to develop a practice for climate action, and to contribute to climate action discourse and activities on campus and beyond. And so with those learning objectives in mind, we then went through a process of determining and sort of assessing what already existed on campus that would allow us to meet these goals. And so the next slide, Oliver. So we had to target quite closely because there are, in fact, a lot of classes on campus with aspects of climate that are embedded in them. But there's much less fewer courses that really target climate as the main component of what is being discussed in the class. And that differentiation was critical for us to determine what classes would be in, what classes would be out, and where the gaps were. So in these categories that I've mentioned before, we were able to break it down even a little bit further, to think about what we wanted in terms of climate science, an understanding of the challenge that we're facing. So this climate emergency problem, right? What is this and how do we tackle this? It was critical to the people in all the consultations that justice be embedded into this degree. To make it accessible to students, we really wanted to bring in courses that were available across campus, so that, again, that students would see the benefit to taking these classes within their major. And then there was this climate action component. And so as we went through and looked what was really available on campus, we found some gaps. And the gaps are these red courses that we have now developed. So though climate emergency was discussed in some courses, it was not the core of a dedicated course. So we found that it was important for us to build a new climate emergency course that has now been run for one offering of that. The climate justice course was also a gap, and geography took that one on as well. And then the climate action component of this certificate was also seen as something that we would be building ourselves. And so there's a series of climate action labs and a capstone that have been dedicated, built and dedicated to this certificate structure. And the climate action labs were built as a really an opportunity to develop the campus community, build a student network, to engage in the skills development that one would need to take action, and then also to execute. And the capstone course follows from those climate action labs. And essentially it's a community engaged learning project opportunity for the students to work in climate, either on campus or off campus in some dedicated project. So just to keep to my time, I'll go to the next slide. And here to think about what we learned when we were doing this. So really, in the big picture here, the collaboration with colleagues and students to me was hugely rewarding. And that is definitely something that I would take away from working in this interdisciplinary space where climate and climate solutions, climate justice really are subjects that bring you together in consultation and collaboration with each other. When we were going through this process, it was a large multi-year project. And then, of course, we had to think about how to manage that marathon of engagement. And the students that we hired through the grants that we were given were really key in helping us keep on track and keep these going. And so they were able to not only bring in and provide feedback and help shape the curriculum themselves, but they made critical discussions. For example, the students really wanted this certificate to be available in first year because the criticism was that on campus, many of these interesting in climate and action and experiential learning opportunities were really only available to students later on in their degree. So some of the feedback from the students really shaped the way that the certificate is played out. The resources are available if you're interested in finding those, and the Sustainability Hub can help. And it was the grant that we received from them that made this come together. And then also the consultations. So when you're building something this large or trying to think about how you work with existing courses on campus, reaching out and having those consultations is really key. And that's what allowed us to be successful in doing this work. So Nina was a key component player in this as well, and she's going to dig into some more targeted aspects of what we were doing in the certificate.
Well, thanks, Tara. And yeah, it was such a pleasure to be able to work with the certificate team for a short time and be a small part of that. I am actually joining you from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Syilx Okanagan peoples, of which the Osoyoos Indian Band is part. And I just want to give honor and respect to the people who have stewarded this land, because I actually just took part in a workshop with Chinook of the Osoyoos Indian Band. So really grateful to be here running our Geographical Sciences Field Camp. And I am going to speak about actually two initiatives in which I'm involved related to the certificate. The first, as Tara said, is developing modules to teach about climate science as in a certificate course that I teach. And the second is developing a fund to support Indigenous, Black, and people of color in taking climate studies. So to the first, the course for which the modules was developed is a large first-year geoscience course. It's called GEOS 102, Our Changing Environment, Climates and Ecosystems. You can see it in the center of this tapestry nodes. And climate is the first half of the course. It's taught to science and non-science students in and out of certificate. There's about 300 odd students in it. So making materials engaging and accessible is really important. And it's one of the course options that teaches the basics of the climate certificate, the climate science aspect. Slide. Yeah, so you can see that at the top of this slide. And so our intent was to build materials that satisfy the certificate learning objectives under the climate science, objectives such as describing core concepts like greenhouse effect, drivers, sort of system interactions and feedbacks, measuring climate change, foundational concepts and tipping points, as well as sort of various impacts of climate change. And in many cases to students that hadn't really had a lot of instruction on these topics before. So to do this, in addition to augmenting and updating our lesson materials, slide, we created a series of thematic modules of interactive digital content that complements the lecture material. And we used something called H5P interactive web pages, which are embedded within Stephen Barnes of Psychology's Tapestry tool. And you can see some of those nodes here. A couple of them are highlighted. I'm going to talk a little bit about climate as a system for an example. So the web pages then are displayed as nodes that you click on to open an H5P interactive web page, which alternatively is embedded into Canvas. And this was sort of part of a broader approach toward blended learning and pedagogies that are kind of immersive and promote active learning, which seemed to be a good way to get this sort of complex science across. Really, as Siobhan McPhee says, to sort of allow the inclusion of technologies as tools to develop a new space that is focused on active learning. I actually deployed these for the first time in fall 2022, right at the start of the certificate, and I definitely had certificate students in there interacting with me, so that was exciting. I made them optional and bi-weekly, and sort of a pilot study, and delivered them as part of an asynchronous component on a Monday that was followed up by a Wednesday and Friday lesson. Since they were optional and to these non-science, first-year students delivered asynchronously, they really needed to be relevant, engaging, attractive. And that's really one of the benefits of interactive H5P pages. So to slide 4, just a quick demo what they look like. So this is the, climate systems one, and it begins with learning objectives, kind of goes on to explore themes. And next slide, using sort of narrative text, interactive videos, some of which our team created. This was my student in my Open Education Resources funded lab that was actually funding this work, another CTLT initiative, and gamified kind of quizzes. And so slide on the next one, you can see that they could sort of also test their responses and get feedback. Again, delivered to complement material rather than as standalone and as an asynchronous resource, and offered bi-weekly. And so, next slide, I ran them in fall 2022, and the student response was really, really positive to these, in anonymous surveys and also in the SEI comments, suggested that they sort of supported engagement, with most students choosing to use them that had participated in this survey, which was about a quarter of the class, a little bit less. And those that actually did use them, just really kind of benefiting from them. And slide, this quote says it all. This is from some of the feedback that we got, suggesting that, these were satisfying, cognitive goals of, teaching the material. And you can see that with the student's comment. as well as those sort of affective domain learning goals like engagement and enjoyment. You know, the fact that students wanted more of these, I actually got an email asking me to where was the tapestry, and they wanted it. And so we were really encouraged by this feedback. And I have to say that the midterm scores for this term were actually better than I've seen them before. The course evaluation scores were higher than I've seen them before. And, you know, I think partly because of helping students a little bit with this complex material. So, you know, just sort of takeaways. I mean, the degree to which the tool addresses some of the sticky issues around teaching climate science, you know, the challenges with teaching about feedback mechanisms, large-scale synoptic patterns, and so on, is unclear, as is the degree to which, you know, we've managed to achieve this sort of lessons at the same time as supporting emotional well-being of students, which research has shown can actually be negatively correlated. The more you know, the more sort of, the less well-being you might actually feel. But the good news is that the certificate team and Tara's sort of leadership is kind of on that, along with the partners, to try to evaluate those two elements. And if you can go to my last slide, if I have time, I just want to say a word or two about the second issue, which is developing an IBPOC Student Support Fund, along with my colleagues in Earth and Ocean and Atmospheric Sciences in their Climate Emergency group, and the Geography Climate Emergency Committee with the co-directors. So this is something that we're doing. It's an important initiative to satisfy our goal of making the climate education accessible and inclusive. That is to develop a mechanism to support members of historically disadvantaged communities who are also probably poised to lead in the solutions. And, you know, since I'm running out of time, I'm not going to go into the weeds with how we develop this beyond saying we're excited to be close to ready to support this, but our experience of developing it sort of suggested some gaps in terms of what, you know, more could be done at the sort of the faculty or university level to support these kinds of initiatives. For example, after more than a year of developing the proposal, promotional materials and plans, you know, we struggled with this, and we had wonderful support from the Arts Development Office in guiding and giving feedback on materials that we produced. But there was an impression that there's no clear body within our faculties or at the university level to kind of provide substantive support beyond approving our proposal. No support in terms of finding donors. So it falls on faculty like ourselves to message our colleagues, to solicit funds to get this kick-started. So it seems a little bit at odds with the university's mandates for climate action, and I think something that we're happy to kind of pursue or planning a meeting with leadership. So then I'll leave the rest to comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Tara. Are there any questions in the room? I don't see any questions in the chat yet. Or you can raise your hand if you have a question. Fortunately, I can't see the whole gallery right now. So, FJ, you're gonna go ahead and
Hi, it's Francis here. Just a real quick question. Is the tapestry material accessible outside of Canvas?
Yes, it is. It's open education resources, so yeah.
Is it that the UBC's OER website then? Or?
Exactly, yes. It's not, but you can email me. I can share the material with you, and it will eventually be shared more widely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Lindsay, you had a question, but was that it?
No, I can ask. I kind of knew you already saw me. I think somehow. I just had a question for Nina. So for the Student Support Fund, what sort of initiatives or what will that support look like? I mean, what will the fund be used for? I don't think you quite had time to cover that.
I didn't have time. So it's going to be used to cover part of the cost of the climate certificate. So a small component of that, maybe 1,000, with 2 being awarded each year potentially. And we're hoping to be ready to provide those in fall of 2023. Is that clear? And it's directed at as I said, at IPOC students primarily. So we have developed a whole complicated method to assess and award those. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious if it was directly going to support individual students, or if you're going to use some of the funds for sort of outreach or programs or that sort of thing as well. Yeah, thanks.
There was also another question in the chat, Oliver. I don't know if you
Yes, thank you. From Elise, did you find challenges with integrating with existing undergraduate programs? I noticed these course credits were available to their existing program requirements.
Yeah, so the intention of the certificate was to provide an option for students that would be available to students across the campus. But there's definitely challenges in doing that. And so one of the things was that the courses couldn't have a lot of prerequisites because we needed them to be easily accessible in and of themselves, not requiring students to take previous courses before they could take that. There's always challenges with scheduling. And so right now, the climate action labs, which is really an aspect where we want everybody to be coming into the courses, and you have to take, the climate action labs are actually courses that the students take 3 times as they're moving through the certificate. In the regular program, there's a compressed program for students who come in as transfer students or find the certificate later, where we can compress it into 2 years. But because they're returning in there, we had to find scheduling that would make it available to students. And so those courses are actually run in early evening, right? So we're trying to find different ways that we can ensure that we're not bumping into the scheduling problems or the conflicts with regular course classes and prerequisite structures. And there was a variety of other things that we were looking at too as we were building the certificate.
Thank you, Tara. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. I think we should probably move on to the next presentation. So thank you, Nina. Thank you, Tara. And moving on, we're going to have Dr. Sandra Scott, Professor of Teaching, Curriculum and Pedagogy from the Faculty of Education, and Dr. Lindsay Rogers, Assistant Professor of Teaching, Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, Faculty of Medicine, sharing with us their experience in developing the climate change education through immersive media, educating for sustainability in multimodal ways. This is a project that is supported by the Sustainability Hub, and Sandra and Lindsay are both sustainability fellows with us right now. Over to you.
Thanks, Oliver. So I'm going to present on the content of our project, and Lindsay will be presenting on the platform of how to access it. It's an open educational resource. So Lindsay and I are in the first year of fellows. We're very excited to apply to the program. We work in different faculties, Faculty of Medicine and Faculty of Education, both science educators, both really interested in climate and nature emergency education. And we know from our students that they're interested too. So how do we get the word out? I work a lot with teachers as well, and teachers are asking, how do I teach climate education? How do I teach climate education in a positive way that links to the BC curriculum? And there's optimism there. So we decided that we would create a speaker series, and working with UBC Studios, Yvonne Dodiak, Edith Lando Virtual Learning Center, we created a speaker series on ocean optimism, with a focus specifically on the Salish Sea. And our first speaker was Dr. David Boyd, and he spoke on the rights of the, you can see, rights of human whales and oceans. And what we did, we recorded his presentation, and then UBC Studios interviewed David. And with those two, both those content pieces are put together into a very slick and professional video. These videos will be used in our courses. I'm using them right now in my environmental education grad course. They'll also be used in our Bachelor of Education courses, and our inquiry seminars, and our science education courses. Lindsay will talk about where she will be using them in her courses. And they'll be accessed through Canvas, but also this is an open educational resource. So not only in our faculties, but across UBC and beyond to community. So we've had Dr. David Boyd present. I presented on Southern Resident Killer Whales, one of my loves. And we recently had Dr. Chris Hartley present. And not only did Chris do a presentation on the intertidal zone, lessons from low tide, we also had a wonderful field experience at Stanley Park by the Girl in the Wetsuit Beach. And we had a really good turnout. So those are all recorded on video. Chris has his interview today, and we'll have another video for our collection. And then Ellen Kelsey will be presenting next week. And you can join virtually, registering through the Edith Lando Center. So Lindsay is going to tell you, okay, so now where do we put these videos to make them open education resources?
Thanks. Laura, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so as Sandra said, we're generally kind of really interested in learning technology and sort of media development. And as we sort of establish this sort of pipeline that's going really well, where we're hosting this seminar series and then sort of reworking a Zoom recording into a much more kind of polished, usable video, we also had a lot of discussions around sort of how would be the best way for sort of educators and students and other individuals to sort of share and access this content. And of course, we've discussed, compiling these resources into a usable kind of open educational resource and submitting them to current sort of databases there, things like UBC Open or Merlot. But we also sort of think that we've recognized that there really isn't a great sort of online interactive kind of platform where students and educators and other individuals can sort of access and share sort of climate projects, climate experiences, climate stories, sort of climate media in BC. So I also am a faculty in residence at Emerging Media Lab. So I work on sort of other projects in emerging media. And we had sort of some discussions on, if we were to develop something like this, what should it look like and who would use it and what should we do? And we had this pretty fun, interesting experience where in winter term 2, we worked with a theater and film class. And so we were clients working with a class. The title of the class is Collaborative Prototyping. It's taught by Dr. Patrick Pennefather, and it's a project-based course. So we were clients working with the course, and we had a group of 4 students. And their project during the term was to prototype using the software Figma what a platform like this might look like, and what sort of functions and features and sort of what should this platform look like. And we gave them sort of, before they got started, we met with these students pretty regularly, and we gave them sort of 3 kind of guiding criteria where we said that we really wanted the platform to have sort of to be centered around some sort of interactive map where content could be pinned to a particular location and sort of tagged to a particular place or location in BC. We also wanted the platform to include some sort of discussion board. And really importantly, we wanted the UI design or the user interface design. We wanted them to design that to be very sort of user-friendly, meaning that this platform could be used by K-12 students, because we're sort of, our initial kind of target here is sort of K-12 students and educators, where we think if we go ahead and develop this, it could also be used hopefully by a lot of other people as well. So so the students that worked on this project through the term, they actually presented their prototype and their work at a symposium in April. And so I think rather than me sort of presenting their prototype, we have sort of a 3-minute video from the students sort of presenting the prototype that they developed. So Oliver, do you mind playing that video? Hopefully if we can cue that up.
Yeah, I'll just need 1 second to share the right screen. See. Just 1 second.
To look at. I mean, it's not engaging. So we wanted to integrate visual sort of functions into our project, and that was the biggest thing. Next, we have a video that we're going to show. So can I just get going? All right, go. Thank you.
Given the scope of our project, we utilized Figma, an interface design application that allowed us to fully conceptualize all the features required for an interactive experience. Figma enabled us to collaborate on interactive prototypes and visual designs that helped us bring our ideas to life. Navigating to the homepage, it consists of a menu bar for easy navigation, administrative login, and the website's main feature, the interactive map. Our community partners and target audience of K-12 students and faculty inspired us to adopt a visual-centric design with the interactive map as the centerpiece of the site. We hope to spark students' interest, promote exploration, as well as to create an intuitive navigation system, allowing them to easily understand the content and navigate through the website. Upon expanding the map, users are transported to a full-screen experience that invites them to explore and learn. It has a clean look and an organization system that makes it easy for students to understand and interact with the map. This page is open to the general population, allowing visitors to explore and gain a deeper understanding of local climate research and efforts in BC. We believe that this is an important use case, promoting accessible and relatable climate education to everyone. In making the website more accessible for individuals with different learning styles and abilities, we prototyped accessibility features such as text-to-speech to foster inclusivity. Our website also provides researchers with a platform to publish their work in an engaging and transformative way, making it accessible for others to learn and apply it to their daily lives. We hope this enables engagement with the researchers and others in their field, and an updated knowledge exchange among the researchers and the users. The post page is an alternative to the map, offering users ability to browse, search for, and explore research in a more text-based format. Users can also engage with the research by leaving comments and engaging in discussions, fostering a collaborative learning environment. Our discussion page is designed for an interactive and collaborative classroom environment and provides two main functions: join a discussion board, and create a new discussion. It is designed for K-12 students to engage in discussion with their peers and teachers and to promote reflection. By clicking on the Join a Discussion button, students can explore topics, post their own research on their class map, engage in discussions, and learn from each other under supervision of a teacher. The discussion board is sorted by assignment, and students can comment on other posts and respond on the discussion board. When clicking on Create a Discussion Board, all users will be able to host a board of their own. Users can add a map and create a discussion board. The class map allows students to explore and learn about climate change, while the discussion board promotes engagement and knowledge sharing in a safe space. We believe that this website has great potential to serve as a valuable resource for researchers, educators, and the general public alike by providing engaging, accessible, and reliable means of information for teachers and students, and to generate an interest in climate issues.
Okay, I think, yeah, you can stop it there. Thanks, Oliver. Right, so that was, I think, an interesting experience. The students did a great job, and it was an interesting way for, I think, students within a theater and film class to kind of engage in climate education. Moving forward, we considered and we contacted some faculty members at the Center for Digital Media. We considered going forward with actually developing this during sort of the summer term, sort of May through August. Decided we would hold off for a little bit because we think we'd be better placed to sort of have more discussions with other potential users about, you know, exactly what a platform like this sort of should look like and what features it should have before we move forward with development. But most likely, in sort of our second year as sustainability fellows, we'll move forward with developing some version of this either at the Center for Digital Media or working with Emerging Media Lab here at UBC. So I think that finish us our section here, Sandra. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Lindsay. Any questions? Let me open the chat here to see if there's anything in the chat. Okay, I just had one question that I was thinking of is how do you engage with emerging media and the other units on campus that can provide this kind of support? How does that get started if people are interested?
Yeah, so both are initiated by project proposals. So for the Center for Digital Media, they have their a group of master's students that go through their program, and they all do sort of a 4-month project running sort of May through August. So it's required funding support's required to have them host one of your projects, but there's sort of an opportunity there, and proposals are due. I believe they were due sort of late February for that sort of opportunity. Emerging Media Lab accepts proposals from faculty twice a year, I believe, sort of March and August, to run projects through that studio. Yeah.
Thank you. Gabriel?
Yeah, just a quick question more on the logistical side, actually, because that video showcased some discussion boards, which is fantastic. Who moderates this? And in terms of the sustainability of the project going forward, how is that administered to make sure, things don't go off the rails?
Yeah, we did have some discussion around that in terms of how sort of open use and sort of content uploading would be for such a platform, and potentially, new content could only be uploaded by registered users. Within the prototype, one of the ideas around having sort of different discussion board options was that some teachers could have curate or compile specific posts within a discussion board that was targeting or used just within a specific class, and there could be a login for that particular discussion board. Yeah, so that sort of thing. But I think a lot of these details have not been completely ironed out yet. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Luan in the chat. Is this a model that could be used by other groups to do something similar? Is there a framework or report that would help other groups build on your work?
Yeah, interesting question. So absolutely. So when we just started sort of discussing this, we did kind of identify this general kind of gap that there are definitely great software options such as Tapestry that Nina presented, and things like Padlet. But in terms of having this open online interactive platform that has a lot of sort of features and potential, I think there's a general sort of lack of that type of resource, and anything that's developed at Emerging Media Labs is completely open. So something that was developed kind of for climate education could absolutely be used for other purposes afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on to the final presentation? No, and there'll be time for more questions at the end for all the panelists, so you can keep those as well if you haven't written them up. So we're going to move on to the work on sustainability in engineering economics, developed by Dr. Tamara Edmansky, Assistant Professor of Teaching in Civil Engineering in the Faculty of Applied Science, and Dr. Gabriel Potvin, Associate Professor of Teaching Chemical and Biological Engineering in the Faculty of Applied Science. And Tamara can't join us today for a sort of last minute situation, but Gabriel's with us and will share the progress on their work. Welcome, Gabriel.
That's a very polite way to say you're stuck with me today. Tomorrow could come. So good morning, everyone. It's the morning. Happy to be here. So we'll be presenting. Actually, I like the range of projects we're presenting today, because this is a more targeted kind of development of content for specific courses within engineering. So we can start with the slides. So we kept some introductory kind of slides. I don't think we need to spend much time on it, other than I wanted to mention that Tamara and I have been involved in sustainability education in engineering for a long time. There is a context that is specific to engineering that we'll refer to a few times, where the considerations we do in sustainability are kind of bound by things like accreditation and mandatory content in different courses. But sustainability really is, in my case, in chemical engineering, and in Tara's case, in civil engineering, sustainability is interwoven throughout all of our courses and all of our kind of different initiatives, right? So this is why the work we're going to present is very targeted. So we can go to the next slide. I've worked with Tara for a while, so she can take credit for this as well. We worked together this term or this year on developing these modules. So let's go to next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So the context of this. So what we did essentially is develop some new modules for the engineering economics courses in engineering. So according to accreditation criteria, every engineering graduate in Canada, regardless of discipline, must take an engineering economics course. And so the classic curriculum is on the screen now. So you can see it's really a decision-making course primarily based on economic factors. So we find the cost of a project for the kind of equipment, the development, to the operation. We see the benefits of it, how much profit we can generate from it. We assess these things in more and more sophisticated modules as we go through, and then we make decisions of should the project go forward or not. Should I replace this particular piece of equipment, and if so, when's that economic sweet spot? So it's really these economic tools to help us make these decisions. However, these focus primarily on economic costs, which is primarily how engineering decision-making is done on the economic level. But increasingly, that's not sufficient. There's a lot of considerations that are not reflected in the balance sheet of a particular project, but that nevertheless are costs or are benefits for that matter. But they don't necessarily kind of lend themselves well to have specific numbers attached to them. So what we did, we developed 4 modules. So we can go to the next slide. We developed 4 modules related to sustainability, different aspects of environmental and social sustainability, and we integrated those into the curriculum here. So what I'll do today, we did this this year. I'll talk a little bit about the content, just a brief overview of the types of modules that we developed, the student feedback that we got because we implemented this this year. And so we can talk a little bit about the kind of context and maybe a few tips for this kind of things or the development of these targeted modules. So if we go to the next slide. So this was the kind of plan. So I've been working on this first term. We developed the content, and then this was deployed in Civil 403, which is the civil engineering version of the engineering economics course that was taught by Tamara this last term. So we integrated those modules and then evaluated it. The evaluation I'm going to show you today is we had a survey that asked these questions here, and the survey questions really were around: do students find the content interesting? Do they find it relevant to their training or to the engineering profession? And then should this type of content be integrated kind of more broadly, not just in civil engineering, but across the engineering economics courses, you know, in Canada, since we all have to do similar things. For context, I used to teach the engineering economics course in chemical engineering, which is why I was interested in this project. So we can go to the next slide. So we can go through the different modules kind of briefly, and then happy to discuss more about anything that's interesting. So the first one is ecological accounting, or also, you know, we leaned on value-based accounting models. So the idea here is that if you want to, for example, cut down a forest to collect lumber and sell lumber, the direct economic costs of this are relatively straightforward, right? You have the equipment you're going to need, you're going to have the labor to operate that equipment, the fuel for the equipment, and so on. We had the benefits of selling the lumber afterwards. But there's some costs in there that are not reflected by this, and that increasingly are finding their way into the engineering decision-making, even on economics level, which is, well, when you cut down a forest, you lose more than the price of the fuel. There's something lost in there, right? And we can attach a numerical number of dollars kind of to that loss that we feel when we had a nice kind of park or a nice forest that is now no longer available. So we looked at these modules and tried to quantify, or at least to assess what those actual costs were beyond the direct operating costs. So we'll go to the next one. So these were the results for the different, the averages for the different surveys. We don't need to worry too much about the numbers here. I'm going to show you a summary kind of table at the end. Generally speaking, students were satisfied with the course. So what we did, we asked them at the end of each module to complete the survey and answer these questions. Generally okay with it, but there was a desire for some more quantitative material, right? Which maybe is not surprising for engineers. And there was some overlap with some content that was seen in other courses, but I'll get back to that a little bit later. So we'll go to the next one. So our second kind of module that we developed, similar general idea here, but the evaluation of social impact. So we'll go to the next slide. So we introduced a few of these social impact assessment tools and frameworks, which is when a project kind of takes place, there's an impact on the world around it. There's a social impact on the community in which that project is built. We can apply this for, large scale plans, so the development of a new technology, things like access to kind of internet in a community for the first time, things like that. But we can use these tools to assess, well, what's to try to get a more representative cost, what's the actual social impact of these kind of projects. So if we go to the next slide, we see the results here. Similar idea. So we had the same, it's new, they're unusual for engineers to consider these types of tools beyond something kind of more tangible. So there was interest there, but also they wanted that more quantitative material. So we did that. And if we go to the next slide, for the third and fourth modules, we took that feedback, we kind of integrated, developed a little bit more, numerical or quantitative content. So the next module we did was on circular economy. So this, these decisions primarily take a linear approach, which is these are the costs. This is a lifetime of the project or the piece of equipment. Then we dispose of it. We analyze the costs and benefits at each stage, and that's the end. But then we introduce the circular economy kind of framework where we reuse everything. We introduce some fairly sophisticated sample examples to show that added costs in one area could mean bigger profits elsewhere, and students could work within that framework. And what was interesting here is that it allowed us to kind of sneak into an engineering course, sneak in a little bit of kind of the politics and the kind of community involvement and what it would take, as a society, as a country, to facilitate, right, the integration of this kind of economic philosophy in the projects that we do. So we got to talk a little bit about policy and what it takes and what the role of engineers is in there. And so if we go to the results on the next slide, we can see that the numbers went up. So they appreciated more numbers. They appreciate the discussion that we have. It was applicable content, which was a win. So if we go to the next one, our last module that we developed, this was my favorite one. This was the funnest one to teach. I went in Tamara's class to give a guest lecture for this one. We talked about cultural and social capital. So they talk about economic capital, which is, if I need $1 million, I'm going to go to the bank. They're going to give me $1 million, and the cost of that is the interest I have to pay them back. So we drew a parallel with social or cultural capital here. Without going into details, if there's any social scientists in the room, I'm sure I'm going to get complaints. But so we're looking at the kind of cost here, which is if I want to have this project, I want to have this plant that is generally unpopular, I need that social capital. There's a cost to pay here, and I need to have enough of that capital accumulated to do it without that big kind of pushback on these things. So if we go to the next slide, we see the results here. And again, kind of results are, that's a description here, but next slide here. So we looked at some case studies. Results are kind of higher. We looked actually at some indigenous mining projects, or rather mining projects in partnership with indigenous communities that use these, straightforward kind of brute force kind of approach to legislation and to kind of the ability for the permits and everything. And another one, more cooperative one, that generated that social capital. And we saw the kind of how much easier the project was, how everyone benefited. So we looked at these kind of case studies, and the content was good, but there's also kind of some complaints here that, well, this is all common sense and stuff. But I mean, yes, but if we're not doing it, is it really common sense? So that was the general feedback. So if we go to the next slide, so I can finish on time here. So this is a kind of summary. So we see numbers generally trending up across kind of all categories. So it's generally positive here. There's of course room for improvement as we integrated some of that feedback. And when I say we introduced more numerical numbers, we didn't sacrifice the kind of content here. We just changed the way we presented some of this and presented more tangible outcomes of this. The students work on a term project. So at the end of the term, they present this big business case proposal for any kind of project that they want, and they had to integrate some of these sustainability considerations in there. So we see it's generally kind of positively viewed and seen as relevant to the discipline, which it is. So this was an encouraging results. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so there's a few things. So maybe Oliver, you can just put them all on the screen here, and we can talk about them. Yeah, one at a time. So I told you there's a specific kind of context for engineering. So we're bound by accreditation. There are learning outcomes that we have to reach, that we demonstrate have to reach in order for programs to be accredited, meaning that they can actually graduate engineers that can go and practice in Canada. And we have, maybe again, unsurprisingly, engineering attracts people that are more quantitatively minded. They think about these projects and these decision makings mostly on technical kind of grounds. So a few kind of tips related to this, and they come from this project, but also other projects Samara and I have worked on in the kind of engineering sustainability field. The first one seems kind of common sense, but a value proposition or the sale pitch that goes a long way. So really convincing students, they all care about sustainability. I don't think any student at UBC doesn't. But this is why we're doing this material. This is why we're covering it. This is how you're going to use it in your career, why it's relevant to your training, and spending a bit of time there kind of helps a lot. Material integration, we could develop standalone modules are like, okay, today we're going to do the sustainability content, then we'll go back to the regular stuff. That's not a good way to do it. That kind of undercuts that first point of the value proposition. It really does have to be kind of integrated as seamlessly as possible. Some challenge that we had here with this project is some of the material was already covered by students in other courses. So our approach was really to develop these modules to be widely applicable, so that if someone in another institution in another discipline wanted to use our modules, that would be easy enough to integrate. The problem is in a discipline like civil engineering, where there is a lot more of this impact assessment for sustainability. So when we covered circular economy, for example, this was not a new concept for the vast majority of those students. So that some of the comments that we received was like, yeah, we've seen this before, it's nice, but let's go further. Whereas if you went to another discipline where the connection is less obvious, like computer engineering or electrical engineering, that might not be the kind of same issue, right? So some of the content needs to be fine-tuned for this. We talked a little bit about context here and that they're asking for numbers. And, this is general tips that I find in most of my courses. Having a guest lecture once in a while just to break up the, same old kind of story is always good, especially when we want to emphasize the topic. So that was one of the reasons that I went in and gave that kind of lecture in tomorrow's class for the social or cultural capital kind of lecture, because that's maybe the least obviously connected to the rest. So to have someone else come in, it was just to kind of emphasize, this is a legitimate thing and you should pay attention, and to try to get a little bit of more engagement, kind of like when we had those substitute teachers at the elementary school level. So with that, I think that was kind of a general overview. I'm happy to talk about this or about anything else, and we can share kind of the material. So just to give you kind of an update on this, we have these modules. We're still reviewing them, fine-tuning a few things. We'll put a Creative Commons license on the material when we're done, and we're happy to share with any interested party. Of course, that was the point of this work.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was excellent. I think we have a question here, Francis.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Very nice, succinct. I have a couple quick questions. Are the engineering economics courses discipline specific, or do they span more than one discipline or department in engineering?
Okay, so I should have clarified. So every department offers their own engineering economics course, especially the bigger ones, for a number of reasons I'm sure you can sort out. But the content is pretty universal. So the curriculum and all this, they all use the same textbooks regardless of discipline. Some of the examples that I would use when I did, the chemical engineering version were different than the examples Samara uses in civil and so on. But that's the flavor text, right?
I mean, because you'd kind of like to see students in the different disciplines working together on some of these issues, because engineers always work as teams anyway. And I could imagine geology, mining, civil, at least chemical, really collaborating very well together if you could get those kinds of students together.
So we do in chemical engineering. It's more. So I mean, without going into all of the restrictions of who can take which course, the chemical engineering version does take specifically mining, geological engineering, and a few others. In
and
the
environmental
course.
engineering too,
work.
probably.
Yeah.
My other quick question is whether you feel that the Engineering and Geosciences Professional Association is keeping up, or whether you're kind of leading the charge and hoping that EGBC can kind of catch up in terms of the expectations for accreditation.
Oh, that's a big question. So real quick kind of answer. So there are some changes, right? So there's EGBC, but also Engineers Canada. But EGBC, for example, has recently kind of revamped the Code of Ethics, which takes care of a few of these things, makes it more comprehensive, and makes it easier to integrate some of this content. Engineers Canada is always kind of working on accreditation requirements to make them more flexible. Like don't quote me on this. I know we're being recorded, but don't kind of quote me on this in the sense that like flexible in the sense of when there are these initiatives that we want to do, it still fits within the accreditation framework, and that it can be evaluated in that kind of sense. So look, things are slow moving, in part because the requirements of accredited programs are to produce competent engineers that, when they go build a bridge, the bridge doesn't fall down. So there's a reason we have those strict standards, but they are always changing. It is not a completely static thing. So could they be faster? Sure. I mean, we can complain about kind of all of these things, but they are moving, I think, in a good direction.
Right. I mean, I'm interested in this area, and I know that Craig Nickel up in Okanagan is pursuing some of these issues as well. So I'm happy to participate in this game a little bit. I'm a PEng, by the way.
Okay, great.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat for you, Gabriel, from Nagar. Gabriel, great work. Do you think these modules could be used in a design course?
So that's another excellent kind of question that we thought about. So if you're teaching a design course and you want to use this, yeah, sure, it makes sense. So one of the challenges that we kind of highlighted, this is part of broader kind of assessment of the work, is we can give these tools to students all we want in engineering and economics if they're not reflected in their big capstone projects. So those not in engineering, just for context, in their final year of study, all engineering students have to do a kind of big capstone project that takes everything they learned over the 4 years in university and into one big design project. And exactly what shape that takes depends on the discipline. But, if we do a social impact assessment and then that big capstone project, doesn't require any of this and they just want the straightforward evaluation, that kind of undercuts the value of those tools. So the hope is that once we have these resources readily available and we share them, we can tweak the deliverables and things like those big design projects. These are not, overhauls of the content. The classic content is still very much relevant and useful, but certainly could be used in those things. I'm happy to share. I think if I remember correctly, Nigar, you do teach the kind of capstone design course. You can certainly talk about how that would look like for your projects offline after.
Yes, awesome. Thanks. We will stay in touch.
Thank you. Any other questions, either for Gabriel or for other presenters? Sandra, please go ahead.
Gabriel, I'm going to ask you about that social and cultural capital. Well, how do you think your students would react if as a case study, you talked about the Roberts Bank expansion, super controversial, lots of good data, quantitative data on marine environment there. Well, how do you think they'd react if you actually started to incorporate that social piece around non-human communities?
Okay, another big question. I like it. So generally speaking, I think, because I've discussed cases or examples like this in a variety of course contexts, and generally speaking, they're amenable to it. In engineering specifically, like they're interested, but the unspoken kind of question that kind of goes on is, am I actually going to have to do this after? So this is a debate in engineering, which is, surrounding sustainability, which is, look, like, do we train our students to meet environmental regulations, for example, and then they're competent engineers that are ready to practice? Or do we go above and beyond and give them, well, this is the minimum, but we want you to kind of target here. If this is not necessarily something that their employers after are going to require them to do, right? So with there's a big accounting of hours spent on every topics in kind of accreditation. So there's a calculus there that's informed by kind of philosophy that kind of underpins kind of all of these decisions. That said, sure, we have some very passionate students about environmental stuff. They lead all sorts of great initiatives on campus, multidisciplinary. They travel around the world to present some of their initiatives. So if you're looking for people to work on this, I'll find you a handful of top-notch kind of engineering students that are going to be happy to do it. In terms of a big course in kind of integrating that in this, you'll have some detractors, you always do, but more on the teach us what we need to know to meet requirements, and that's what employees are going to want. But you're going to have a lot that are passionate and take that up, I think. So yeah, long answer to your short question. But
thanks, Gabriel. Very positive. I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Any other questions for any of the speakers today? There's a comment in the chat from Midi about also being curious about what Sandra brought up, thinking about ecosystem capital.
I don't have a kind of big answer to this. These modules are designed to be in a one kind of lecture as well, again, because constraints of what we have to be able to deliver in this course. There's a lot of interesting work around this, and so these modules are not meant to be a comprehensive overview. It's to give a taste to the engineering students that these evaluation tools that we have can be more comprehensive, can be modernized, can take into consideration a lot of these things that we need. So we had discussions before, which is, I don't want to open that particular can of worms, but if tomorrow the kind of governments, say, okay, like 0 emissions by next year, that's what we're going to be teaching our students tomorrow, right? So it's there's that kind of balance there. So I think a good first step, at least, and I'll argue a necessary one, is to give students a taste of the tools that are available beyond the minimum requirements. And then once they do tackle these things, they'll at least be aware that if nothing else, that the questions are more complicated than just the equation. And if we have that, then I think that is a success, right? Even if they don't remember the specifics of a particular framework when they're working on a project later.
Yeah, good. Lindsay?
Yeah, I just have a question for Tara. So the climate certificate program, amazing project. I can sort of appreciate how much work that was and what sort of an opportunity it is for our students. Amazing that you put that together. But I'm just wondering what comes next. So, I mean, as we sort of move forward in terms of more opportunities for our students to engage in sort of climate related programs, like, yeah, what do you think comes next after certificate program? Or, well, I mean, a minors, I'm not a calendar expert. A minor would be a harder thing probably to have approved or to put together. Yeah. What do you think?
Minors aren't necessarily any harder. So our choice for a certificate really had to do with the accessibility of it, not about the ease of implementation or anything like that. So the way we built, there's sort of 2 parts that I'll answer the question. And the first part was that with the development of the new courses, we felt that the certificate could provide a base for extension into minors or majors from a variety of different disciplines. So, that was one thing that we felt that we were filling a gap, particularly in the 3 main places that we did. So one around climate justice, one around the problem of decarbonization. So that like, what is the climate crisis? Why does it exist? Why is it so difficult to deal with? A real course dedicated to that. And then the climate action labs, where we had the students working on experiential project-based, team-based work. So with those now, there are some courses that people can pull on that would complement their disciplines, and happy to have them developed out into other different types of credentials. So that's that part. But the other part is that the certificate was full the first year. So we, based on the quotas of our capstone class and the number of students that we can manage through the climate action labs, we are taking an intake of 60 students a year, and in year 1 we were full. So our next step is to try to provide more options for the students within the certificate so that we can take in more students. So for example, Another project that came through the Sustainability Fellows program was an experiential learning course in forestry. And so I am in conversation with them to try and get them to accept certificate students into their course. So that could be an alternative capstone course for students in the certificate, particularly forestry students. And it would make it, again, sort of that opportunity for integrating it within their regular program to get recognition for the certificate while also getting their degree. And so the more of these sort of dedicated climate focused courses that start to come onto the calendar, offered all across campus, that we can get access to, the more we'll start adding in and broadening out the courses that are in the certificate. So the other place where those new courses can come in is within the optional sort of elective aspect. Again, courses that dedicated, targeted, climate-focused courses, we can start to just add them in there and let more and more students from a variety of disciplines see how their fields are relevant within the climate certificate as well.
So is that one of the challenges then that students face in the certificate program is access, I imagine, especially to upper level courses? Because I definitely have that experience in my department. I mean, I started teaching an environmental science course in biochemistry, and I had this great, this is great, it's gonna be a really interdisciplinary course. And then it's full the first week of registration every year, which is amazing that there's so much demand for, these types of courses now. But my experience was just that my course is full with biochemistry students every term. And is that sort of common across most departments, are you finding?
Yeah, that's becoming more and more. So I also am director of the environmental science program, and we're finding that originally, right, our second year courses, Introduction to Environmental Science, we could take in even numbers of environmental science students and other students on campus. But as there's more and more demand for these, the pool of other students on campus is getting smaller and smaller. So we are having to look at changing the pedagogies in those courses to open them up or add new sections, or because there's student demand for this. And it's challenging to manage. In the certificate, the courses that we built are intended to be large student courses. So the new climate emergency course and the climate justice course, Nina, you can maybe help me remember, but I think those are, towards 200 students in those classes. So those ones were designed specifically for the large format class.
Thanks, Tara. Judy, you have a question?
I have a thought. I cannot make it into a succinct question. Sorry. So this is a question to all of everyone here. So I'm hearing that there's a need. Students are wanting to know more about climate change, problems like that. I just heard that the courses are full, they cannot get in. And then I'm also thinking that some students are also feeling that they may not have the space to take other elective or other courses that is not required by the program that they are in, and that they may not have the space to take on another course, or they may not have the extra money, tuition, time, or the bandwidth to take another course. How severe is this a problem? Am I imagining it? And if this is a problem, what else can we do? Like, I'm thinking again, every one of us who teach will include a small piece in our teaching, but do we have numbers on how small those pieces are? Just sorry, a very random thought and not very succinct. Please comment.
I can just say a small word that's been kind of on the radar in our department, and to cite our manager of student services, Suzanne, who probably deals with this more, Suzanne Lawrence. Her idea is that, something that our climate action committee and so on should be developing is just like a 1-credit course that's just like a week-long workshop or a 2-day workshop that faculty can cycle through and teach that relates to something related to climate change. But anyway, just on ideas for how we can do this that have been popped around.
Yeah, I think the I don't know how to say this succinctly. I'm going to have to run out for another meeting, but I think the philosophy so far on campus, so the Sustainability Hub is a non-academic unit that's intended to enable and support sustainability education throughout the campus. So the Sustainability Hub doesn't run classes itself. So we can't run, like they experimented with something like that, more than a decade ago. And it really was recognized that it's not the place for that. And so the way that we're supporting right now, the proliferation and diversity of classes is by encouraging conversations, interdisciplinary interconnections, the types of things that you're seeing here. And the more faculty that are interested in that, the more of an argument that we have that we need to be breaking down some of these barriers and allowing students to transfer more easily between disciplines. We need to allow teaching in cross-cutting ways. And there's a recognition that there's an appetite for that. And so that's one of the things that the Sustainability Hub is in conversation about regularly, around how do we support faculty who are interested in being on that cutting edge and trying these things out, and then how do we share those experiences down to others in a way that will make it easier for the next ones who are coming along. But I am going to run because actually for one of those I'm heading to a next meeting that's a conversation between math and EOS on how to embed climate education and examples into first-year math courses. So I'm running off to that. It's exactly what you're talking about right now, Judy. Okay, thank you all for joining me.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Nina, as well. And I think if there are no other questions, are there other questions? I don't see any in the chat. I know CTLT is going to post a link to a feedback survey right now. So if you're kind enough to click on that link and complete that survey, that would be great. But if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank the speakers and CTLT and also all the participants. Great to have you all here. I think over 30 people participated today. So we'll see if the recording will be available and we'll let you know. And I think CTLT will be sharing some of the resources of their sessions after the week is over with participants. So thanks everyone for joining. And if you have any questions about supports that the Sustainability Hub offers, please contact me directly, or you can go to our website, sustain.ubc.ca, and have a great rest of the week.